Today, the two sides have signed a record $250 billion deal. That's a big deal for both sides, isn't it?
It is. I think just to name a couple of the deals, we're talking about Sinopec and Bank of China doing this Alaska LNG deal worth something like $43 billion. Qualcomm, so you've got a telecommunications deal, $12 billion to 3 Chinese smartphone companies for semiconductors, and then an aviation deal, China Aviation, $37 billion for 300 Boeing airplanes. Mm-hmm. What we need to watch, though, is how many of these have already been announced and how many of these agreements are non-binding, and whether or not these deals are sort of emblematic of broader consensus and broader reforms within the economic relationship between the U.S. and China.
Actually, what really impressed me is that many of the deals looks more like a shopping spree from the Chinese side of the United States. We have seen the buying from China to the United States of about 12 million tons of U.S. soybeans, as well as 300 Boeing aircraft, as what you said, as well as the massive amount of natural gas from Alaska, which happens to be, by the way, the largest energy export ever in the U.S. history. So my question is, given this so-called miraculous amount of trade and deals, does it really satisfy Trump's expectation in reducing this massive trade deficit? What's your perspective as the White House?
Well, he's insatiable about making deals, that's for sure. It's going to really depend on how many of these come to fruition and at what level. If they grow, of course, that's going to be even better. But as we've talked the numbers, you know, it's not going to overcome the massive trade deficit annually between these two countries, but it's a good start.
Yeah, because I think many of the problems of the massive trade deficit is not really caused by China's unwillingness to buy, but sometimes it's caused by the U.S. unwillingness to sell, and sometimes it's also being caused by the structural problem of the country's economies, right?
Yeah.
Well, the trade deals are impressive in numbers. Let's also talk about the activities that China has planned for President Trump. I mean, it's dubbed as, the officials calling it the State Visit Plus.
Exactly.
What is so special about this?
Well, this time what impressed me the most is that the very first stop of President Trump's visit here in China is neither the Great Hall of the People or his hotel, but rather it's the Forbidden City. And it's actually the very first time that a Chinese president is accompanying a foreign head of state to visit that Forbidden City in a century, right? Of course, the two leaders drank tea and watched the Peking opera performance. And by the way, Trump changed his cover of the video Twitter account into a group photo of of him and also President Xi and two first ladies, as well as the performers of the Peking opera into the Twitter account, which is quite fascinating for many Chinese people. But what impressed me the most is, as what you said, the showing off, if I may say that, of the granddaughter of Trump. Yes, I think showing off your kid or grandkid and get a positive feedback from other people is really a good way to build up your personal relationship. And I saw the genuine smile on Trump's face. It's not the politician's way of smiling, but the smiling of a grandpa.
Well, and I was asking Han Peng, you know, how Americans will read that as maybe not as it's not an official enough gift, maybe it's not a grand gift, but as a more personal gift like that, does that come across as more meaningful when these two leaders are presenting that type of gift to each other?
Actually, I think that kind of gift is, I cannot read the mind of President Xi, how he feels about this gift, but I think it's a big gift for Chinese people, because as China is rising, many Chinese people are hoping that more and more Westerners can have a better understanding of China, as well as its culture and language, and to see that the children, the first ladies of the big family of Donald Trump, is learning Chinese and performing so well as what President Xi said, A+ in the Chinese language. It's really something encouraging for many Chinese people to go global, to become more international.
It might be more encouraging, too, for more Americans who find it a difficult language to learn and be encouraged.
It's interesting to see this human element, you know, in between the interactions between the two presidents. It does seem like they enjoy each other as a company. They have some sort of affinity, and that's good, at least from the optics. And during today's special statements, you know, today is the day when the serious discussions, actions were taking place. A range of topics were being discussed. Trade, you know, the DPRK issues, bilateral ties. But have you sensed any major shifts in policies in these sectors, perhaps?
Not major shifts, but I think you sense that the relationship is growing and growing closer. We also got some perspective in the White House press corps from the Secretary of State, who kind of peeled back the curtain a little bit for us and said what his impressions were, what he felt he heard from President Xi that he hadn't before. He said President Xi talked a lot about how China is implementing the United Nations sanctions against Pyongyang and got into some level of detail on that. And he also talked about the timeline for the sanctions to work. He said President Xi said it's going to take some time and you need to give this process some time. Now, we don't have that verified from the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but I think the Americans at least conveyed to the Western media that they feel like they made some progress in understanding the Chinese perspective, and that's really going to be key if these are the two countries that bring about some sort of arrangement when it comes to Pyongyang's nuclear program.
Yeah, and Han Peng, you've been covering President Donald Trump's visit here in China all the way. Anything you find particularly interesting that you want to mention to us?
Well, of course, there are a lot of interesting things, but one thing that I really need to mention is this so-called hashtag Trump is here, trending on China's answer to Weibo, which is the China answer to Twitter, which is Weibo. Weibo users have been trying to guess what's on the tourist map during the state visit of Trump. One user guessed that Trump would visit the Palace Museum on Wednesday, the Great Wall of Mutianyu on Thursday, and the Panda House at Beijing on Friday. The guesses are based on closure notices sent from these popular tourist destinations. But if answers seem obvious, there are other questions still keeping one person up at night, which is quite interesting. Another user said, Trump's visit worried me so much. The food, the safety, and travel plans. I did not sleep well last night. When I woke up, I started to realize that I am overestimating myself.
All right, very interesting. Thank you, Jessica and Han Peng, joining us in the studio.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you very much.